set the record straight, the idea for this book came from my late brother, John, which is a story in itself, so please bear with me for a few minutes while I explain. My brother, John William Hogg, left school in 1963, and at the young age of 15, he had joined the British Royal Navy. By the time he was 17, he was an able seaman serving on HMS Llandaff on a 9-month tour of duty in Southeast Asia, with the ship's base being in Singapore. As a young man with testosterone levels that were running amok, he spent most of his free time in bars and brothels in places like Bugis Street in Singapore, Angeles City in Philippines, and Walking Street in Pattaya. In those days, seamen in the Royal Navy were given their daily tot of rum ration, and drinking alcohol was a fundamental in their daily lives. By the time John came home, he was a heavy drinker and smoking 20 cigarettes a day, and he had a minor STD. He did his 9 years in the Royal Navy and then joined the Merchant Navy, and by the time he was 35, he was an alcoholic. John was a drunk, but not a morose, moody or angry drunk. He was a happy drunk. He could handle his drink well, and he could still do his job on board the ship. And although it's frowned upon today, with most shipping companies having a dry ship policy, in those days heavy drinking was part and parcel of working at sea. John had moved from Middlesbrough to London in the 1980s, and his family were living in Surrey Quays, about 1.5 miles from Deptford High Street in London, where the Stratton brothers' murders took place. In 2007, John was diagnosed with throat cancer, probably due to his now 30-a-day cigarette habit. He eventually went into hospital to have the cancer removed, and he struck it lucky as the surgeons removed the cancer and it never returned. But then he struck it unlucky. While he was in the hospital ridding his body of the cancer, he caught golden staph, a flesh-eating disease which was rife in some of London hospitals at that time. To cut a long story short, the infection was very bad and they had to cut away half his face and jaw to try to stop the disease from spreading. The disease also infected his throat and he was unable to eat solid foods for the rest of his life, and he survived on thickened liquids with added nutrients. This cured his alcoholism, as he could no longer drink thin drinks as they made him choke, and he could only take tiny sips of water to quench his thirst. It also stopped his 30-a-day cigarette addiction, as he could no longer breathe in the smoke. If that wasn't bad enough, his speech was impaired and he had to try to learn to talk again. John never got his full speech back, and he always carried a pad and pen around with him so that he could communicate if people could not understand him. Now, for most people, having half their face cut away and looking someone like who had escaped from P.T. Barnum's freak show, those are his words, not mine, and unable to eat or drink properly and with a speech impediment, that would be an end to their life. I know that it would be if it was me. I would retire to my bedroom, had my liquid meal sent up to me, and never wanted to see or talk to anyone ever again. But John was made of stronger stuff than me, and still wanting to live his life and work and earn a living, he applied to film companies to work as an extra. There are many film companies that need people in their films to look like they have deformities or look much different to everyday people, and they have makeup artists and special effect departments to do this. But John didn't need makeup or special effects. He was a natural, and he was in high demand. He played a prisoner in Jack the Giant Slayer, a prisoner again in Great Expectations. He was a hospital patient in the English television drama Top Boy. He stood in front of Jude Law in a dole queue in the movie Alfie, and he appeared in many other British films and television productions. While working as an extra, he heard of a Royal Naval charity that was offering grants to ex-Royal Naval seamen for them to go back to school or university to help them restart their lives when they left the Navy. John applied and went for an interview and was offered a full grant. He then enrolled for a 3-year drama and writing course at Greenwich University. John was always good at making up and telling stories, and his handwriting was meticulous. In another life he would have been a great author. It's here that this story begins. John loved the course and his teachers loved him, as he was a very gifted student and eager to learn. Over the next few years he excelled at his course and started to look for a writing project that he could make his own. He knew that he'd wasted a lot of his time through alcoholism, and for the first time in 45 years his brain was working to full capacity without the alcohol and cigarettes making his decisions for him. He came across a little known story of the very first time fingerprinting was used to gain a murder conviction in Great Britain in the early 1900s. I was living in Australia in those days, but we were in close contact as we always were throughout our lives. He would email me and tell me about his project, and sometimes he would ask me to help him with something that he was stuck on or wanted my opinion on. I knew that the story had taken over his life and that he was happy. And then in June 2014, I got a call from Jane, his partner, saying that John would like to see me, but he didn't like to ask. And as he couldn't fly to see me in Australia because of his illness, would I come to London to see him? My wife Colleen and I talked about it. We both loved John, so we decided that we'd fly to London together to visit him. A week later we arrived in Heathrow and booked into a hotel close to where John was living, and the next morning we took a taxi to his house. When I saw John, I could see that he deteriorated significantly since the last time that I'd seen him, and he was a lot sicker than I had originally thought. We spoke about our families and our lives and reminisced about our childhood that we'd spent together, and we eventually got round to his project. John told me all about it, where he was up to, who the main characters were, and his plans to release it as a screenplay when it was finished. He said that he was having problems with writing as his hands and fingers were not strong for holding a pen and constantly writing. By this time John was getting tired, so Colleen and I said we'd see him the next day, and we went back to our hotel. Colleen suggested we buy him a laptop computer so he didn't have to write in longhand, and I thought that was a great idea. So the next morning we were at Argos when they opened, and we brought John a laptop and then got a taxi to John's house. He loved the laptop and we set it up for him and showed him how to use it, and then spent the rest of the day chatting. Before we left, I told him that I'd come back the next morning and take his manuscript to a print shop, scan it, put it on a flash drive and then transfer it to his laptop. John thanked us again and said that he was tired, and then went up to his bedroom for a nap. 3 hours later, Jane phoned to tell us that she'd gone to wake John up and he'd died in his sleep. So, fast forward 3 years, Colleen and I have broken up after nearly 50 years together, and I'm now retired and living in Koh Samui in Thailand, and I've started to write travel books on Thailand and Southeast Asia. The first book I wrote, to my surprise, was picked up by a publisher, and I was offered a publishing contract. Over the next few years I released 4 more travel books and a biography, and found that just like John, I enjoyed writing and being an author. I normally write my travel books during the wet season in Thailand, as it can rain every day for a few months, so it's an ideal time to stay home and write. In 2020, when the wet season was approaching, I decided I was getting bored writing travel books and realised that I needed a new challenge. I spent some time thinking about other subjects to write about. Then one morning I woke up and had a light bulb moment when John's story of the Stratton brothers came to mind. I'd never spent much time reading about the case before, but when I started to do some research into the murders, although there wasn't that much information on the internet, what I did find out was fascinating, and I could understand why John had chosen it and how it had taken over his life. John was writing this story on the Stratton brothers as a screenplay. I wouldn't know a screenplay if it jumped up and bit me on the leg, so I wrote it as a novel. The last time I spoke with John, that day in May 2014, we were joking around and I asked him who he would want to play the leading role when his screenplay was picked up by some major film company. He told me that Jude Law was really nice to him and a great actor when he was an extra standing next to him on the dole queue in Alfie, so he should play Alfred Stratton. We delved deeper into his list of actors playing his movie, and he named some actors who he had met and who had played supporting roles to him during John's acting career. He decided that Ewan McGregor would play Albert Stratton and Ian McShane would play Chief Inspector Fox, Bill Nighy Chief Prosecutor Muir, Emily Tomlinson would play Kate, and Amelia Clark would play Annie. So if you're looking at this video, Jude, Ewan, Ian, Bill, Emily or Amelia, get your people to call my people.